There are lots of debates over garbage and what we should do with it. A new approach wants to eliminate this problem by moving toward cradle-to-cradle product design and production and reproduction. Joining us now to explain this so-called circular economy, Clarissa Morawski. She is Managing Director of Reloop Platform and Principal of CM Consulting in Peterborough, and it's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you, Steve.
Nice
to be back.
You were a little larger last time I saw you.
Yes, I was pregnant last time.
Very pregnant last time. All went well, I trust?
Yes, very well.
Good.
10 years ago, actually.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right, let's start with Reloop Platform. What is that?
So Reloop Platform is an initiative of mine. I co-founded the Reloop Platform. It is a pan-European organization which is primarily focused on communicating the circular economy and really focusing on legislators. So they understand what they need to do in order to propel the circular economy forward in Europe.
The circular economy is an expression that a lot of people may not know, so we're going to play a little so-called explainer video here from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, which will hopefully explain it very well, and then we'll come back and chat, okay? Sheldon, if you would, let's roll that clip.
By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense. Instead of the throw away and replace culture we've become used to, we'd adopt a return and renew one, where products and components are designed to be disassembled and regenerated. One solution may be to rethink the way we view ownership. What if we never actually owned our technologies? We simply licensed them from the manufacturers. Imagine if we could design products to come back to their makers, their technical materials being reused and their biological parts increasing agricultural value.
Okay, so fascinating and a very different idea from obviously the approach we take right now. So finish this sentence for us to give us a better sense about what you're trying to achieve here. The circular economy is an approach that, what?
Recirculates all of our resources back into the economic cycle so that we never lose them. And they just keep getting circulated over and over and over again. And it's a concept that we used to live by before the Industrial Revolution, but at some point we got off track and we adopted this linear model where we just take, make, and dispose of products. So circular economy attempts to get us back into that circular way of doing business. And it's a concept that was, I think, first coined by Maurice Strong when he talked about sustainable development in the 80s. And then we talked about zero waste. And then we talked about sustainable materials management. Circular economy is effectively operationalizing those basic concepts of circularity.
Why did we get away from it if that's what we were doing for so many hundreds, if not thousands of years?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how it happened, but at some point we as consumers and corporations decided that ownership was the way to be. We needed to own products and goods, and that we couldn't borrow them or share them or rent them anymore. That if we wanted to be successful, we needed to own things. Everything from clothing to appliances to cars to bicycles, everything had to be owned. And as soon as you own something, when its life is over, you're stuck with it. And I don't have a connection to get it back to the manufacturer so they can reutilize some of the components. It sits in my basement. And that's kind of where that circular piece broke down and it became a linear model.
Even in my lifetime, though, we did used to, I mean, I do recall, anybody who's young who's watching this will not get this, but they used to build houses with little holes in the walls with doors on both sides, because when you were finished with the jug of milk, you'd put it in there and the milkman would come and, right? I mean, we did do this quite in a widespread way all the time. We did get away from it though, didn't we?
Absolutely, and I mean, a part of it is, there's a number of things, and one of them is the cost of labor versus the cost of raw materials, where we have so much subsidization of primary resource extraction that it became cheaper to purchase raw materials over and over and over again than reutilizing raw materials, because that was more labor intensive. But we're starting to see things change, and we're starting to see corporations realize that they can actually make more money by bringing back products, remanufacturing, retooling them, recycling them, composting them, and also have a better relationship with their customers.
If we did this and got away from it, is there something special about this particular moment in history that is making us reconsider the need to do this again?
Well, it's a combination of things. Certainly climate change is front and center. And that's really spearheading a lot of this, is that we know that when we recirculate goods, whether it's metals primarily, plastics, and even food waste, we will move closer to mitigating climate change. For all materials. Food waste is a great example. 40% of our food from the field right through to our table gets wasted. If we were to rechannel that food into human beings, livestock, and the rest of it compost to reneutralize our soils, we would actually do great gains in terms of mitigating climate change.
Well, this prompts the next question, which is, I thought we kind of did all this already anyway. I mean, we do blue box recycle. We've got the compost. I mean, in a lot of big cities, we have, you know, composting, green bin, this type of thing. Don't we do this already? We've
come a long way, but we haven't come nearly far enough. And we need to sit back, talk about where we've made our mistakes. You know, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. We have weak links. The minute you break one of those links, your circularity is no longer circular. So we need to sit back and say, okay, what's working? Let's go with it. Let's make it better. What's not working? Why not? And let's see how we can make it better. And that's ultimately where the regulators come in, because they have a role to play in terms of mending some of those weak links.
But again, if I've got a smartphone that I want to get rid of and I want to move to the next whatever up, the next incarnation up, you can take the old smartphone and, you know, they take it back and they recycle it, and presumably, in other words, we're doing a lot of this already anyway, aren't we?
Well, the smartphone is a great example. I mean, the smartphone industry, in particular, I'll name one company, Vodafone, has realized that that people want to get new swanky phones every year.
Regularly,
or at least every 18 months. So why not sort of buy into that as a business? So they now offer a buyback program where they say, after a year, bring back your old phone, we'll give you a brand new phone, but we want to take back your phone.
And what do they do with the old phone?
Well, the old phone, they dismantle them and they pull out the key components if they're no longer usable. And if they are usable, they resell them in the secondary market. So there's a tremendous revenue stream there. The other thing is that phones in particular have some very precious metals in them, metals that are becoming much harder to get today. And that's one of the other economic interests for companies like cell phones, where there are some materials in these phones which they really need to get back. And they can get them back if they can get the phone back, dismantle the phone, versus going to an electronics recycler where they take all of the electronics, shred them, and extract the metals. They're not going to get those particular components back, and they're going to be more expensive.
What are some, okay, so cell phones you've mentioned. We've talked about some other products as well that you can do this recycling chain with, relooping the economy, if you like. Tell us some products right now that we would not traditionally think of as being products that you could repurpose, reuse, regenerate, etc.
Okay, so the first one would be lighting as an example. There's a great case study of Philips. Philips has really embraced the circular economy, where they've decided, you know, we are not in the business of providing light bulbs, we're in the business of providing lighting. And most consumers, whether they're commercial or even homeowners, you know, they would much rather pay for the service of lighting than have to think in terms of swapping out the light bulbs, buying new light bulbs. So Philips offers now the service of lighting versus the product of light bulbs. And the value add for the consumer, especially a commercial consumer, is they don't have that capital outlay of cash at the beginning of the process by acquiring all the equipment, but rather they're acquiring the service. So they're paying on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, to Philips money for the value of lighting in their facility.
Mean somebody comes to your home and replaces the light bulbs when they're
Well, I'm
burned out,
talking about it on a commercial scale, but it certainly means that, you know, you could eventually transfer it to a householder basis where, I mean, effectively, if I want the service of lighting, I would rather buy a light bulb that I hardly have to ever replace. So we're already seeing design there in terms of circular economy. So now I'm buying LED lighting because I hardly ever have to replace it.
Lasts almost forever.
Another example is the dishwasher. You know, we were confronted with a broken dishwasher. When the service guy came in, he said, well, you can replace the part for $350. It's a good dishwasher, but it needs to be replaced, the motor, or you can just buy a brand new one. So there you say to yourself, you know, I just want clean dishes. And I would much rather not have to expend all this money. I'd rather pay a leasing fee, for example, for my dishwasher, that I can always count on clean dishes. And the minute that product needs to be replaced, I'll just call the company and they'll come in and replace the part themselves because it's part of my leasing agreement.
We do this obviously with cars.
And we do it with hot water heaters, and we do it with furnaces, et cetera.
But it's I guess, are you asking people to make a bit of a cultural leap to the point where We do it without thinking for cars and hot water heaters and so on. Now you want us to do it for dishwashers, lawnmowers, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a big cultural leap, and it's moving away from this notion that we need to own things. Because at the end of the day, we don't need to own everything. We just want the service. Even if it's, a handbag, we may only want that handbag for a couple of years until we grow tired of it. But now, if I get a handbag, it ends up in my closet after 2 years because I don't want it anymore. We have to rethink how we see consumption, and that do we actually need to own the product, or do we just want the service of that product?
Do you have evidence to point to that suggests that people are interested in completely reappraising their relationship with products in this way?
I do. Well, my evidence is anecdotal, but people are sick and tired of badly made products. And the situation in terms of built-in obsolescence is getting worse than ever. The average printer these days has a 3-year lifespan. Repairmen are talking about it openly now, that these appliances don't last nearly as long as they used to. My parents' fridge was there for 30 years. Ours, it's 10 years old, it's on its way out. So I do think that people are frustrated because at the end of the day, it's them that have to deal with a product that's now broken. They're without that product for a little while. They have to go and purchase a new one. They have to deal with the old one. People don't want that. They just want clean clothes, clean dishes, refrigerated foods. It's really simple.
We have to, in your view, we have to take a different approach, a new approach to our relationship with products, more service-oriented as opposed to the product itself. Do you have anything to point to that suggests that business is actually interested in providing what we want in this new way?
There are quite a few companies that are standing out as being examples of leaders in this regard. Renault has done quite a bit with their cars and leasing the electric batteries from their cars, as I talked about Philips. We've had a well-known case study would be Interface Carpet Company that introduced a leasing model some time ago because they ultimately wanted to get their old carpets back from their corporate clients so they could reutilize all those raw materials to make new carpets. So it's starting to happen. Companies are starting to report that they're making quite a bit of money off it, believe it or not, because they're spending a little bit more on labor, but a lot less on capital. They're not having to remake the components, rebuy the raw materials because they're getting them back. So it's starting to slowly happen. Obviously, it's definitely starting in the larger electronic types of products, but it's also starting to move to other kinds of products as well.
Well, if it took us 100 years or more to get into this, I got to keep up with the Joneses thing in order, I got to own everything. How long is it going to take us, do you think, to rid ourselves of that habit, which you think is ecologically unsustainable?
Well, I don't think it's a keeping up with the Joneses thing. As I said, you just want to have clean dishes, and it doesn't really matter if you own it. You just have to tweak the way you think about it. And I think it's about, at the end of the day, it's about making sure that you recognize the value of your time and dealing with broken stuff. And also, what are the life economics of this product? If I'm buying a printer like I did 2 years ago and then it dies 2 years later, do I want to go to the store, get a new printer, spend another $350 for a product that's only going to last me 3 years? I don't. I just want a printer that prints.
I get you. Let me follow up on this, because we've had somebody on this program before talked about the sharing economy or the bartering economy, where instead of everybody on the street going out and buying a lawnmower, the neighborhood buys a lawnmower and everybody shares it, because the lawnmower sits in the garage 95% of the time doing nothing if one person buys it. The terror in that scenario is that we make a lot fewer lawnmowers and a lot of people lose their jobs. Do you see any similar kind of danger in this kind of new economic approach?
Well, it's not about the number of units you're producing. It's about the value of the unit that you're offering for sale. So you don't actually have to make a new one every single time. It's about literally offering a valuable product. And often that will be a reconstituted product that people want to spend money on, because people aren't interested necessarily in ownership. They just want to have the service of that product.
Last question. How do you make this happen?
Well, I think you have to talk about it. You have to sit down with businesses and get them to try to think outside of the box. Those corporate leaders have to talk about their stories and how they're making money at it. And of course, what I like to focus on most is getting regulators to use their powers where we need them. which isn't a prescriptive approach necessarily. There are non-prescriptive ways, outcome-based performance mechanisms through regulation, through economic incentives, where we can really stimulate and nudge the business community to move forward in this capacity.
Fascinating idea. Clarissa Morawski, Managing Director, Reloop Platform. Thanks a lot for coming into TVO today.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.